Dear Earthmates, today we are visiting the Peace Pentagon in Virginia, and our Earthmate is Laura George, whom I met only a few days ago at the 15th convention of the World Parliament, organized by the India chapter of the Earth Constitution and World Parliament organization. Thank you so much, Laura George, for accepting this invitation. And will you kindly enlighten us about your project, the Peace Pentagon, and whatever you wish to share with other Earthmates?
Well, thank you, Tarek, for this invitation. It is a joy to be able to speak with my Earthmates and have this forum that was a surprise to me. I'm now familiar with your work, and I commend you for this podcast and all the other things that you've done to achieve a better world for all of us. That too is my passion. I started out as an attorney. I started out as a relatively normal human being who was just caught up in the upper middle class movements of American culture. And one day I started to awaken. I started to awaken to the many challenges that face us as Earth beings. I began to think about how I might help bring to this planet a greater sense of urgency that we meet these challenges. And I ended up leaving the practice of law, becoming an interfaith minister, and starting the Oracle Institute. And that was darn close to 20 years ago. I've been at this. Moved down here to Southwestern Virginia in 2010. And I am in one of the most sacred and beautiful and pristine locations in North America. I won't even limit it to the United States. Behind me, you can see the Peace Pentagon, a picture of it. And to the south of the Peace Pentagon is the New River, which is the oldest river in North America. And some geologists believe it's the oldest river in the world. So I have been living here for over a decade. It has further inspired my desire to assist all sentient beings on planet Earth. And yes, we met due to the Provisional World Parliament that was called under the auspices of the Earth Constitution, which is a document that is elegant. It was crafted by some of the best minds in the world. And it was crafted over the course of about 30 years when it became evident that the United Nations was not a democratic body. That also helps explain why third world nations and those in the global south really love this document, because they have been hampered at the United Nations. Their vote is relatively meaningless. So a bunch of scholars and jurists, upon recognizing that fact, designed this document. And when I first learned of it, I thought, oh my goodness, you know, that's like 100 years in the future. It's like Star Trek, you know, a federated Earth. And then I realized that we cannot predict cycles of change. And while it might seem something that's so futuristic to be unlikely to be adopted now, one never knows. And in addition to not knowing the future perfectly, even though I consider myself an oracle, if we don't try now, I mean, if we don't have those forebears, those people who will bravely embark on a new adventure for our dear planet, then it will never happen. So I have thrown a lot of my energy and experience into the Earth Constitution Institute. I'm a director there. My primary role, though, is as director of the Oracle Institute. and that's where I live at Oracle campus. The building behind me is the Peace Pentagon. It looks completed, and it is on the outside. However, we still have to complete the interior. The vision for building this headquarters and this beautiful strategic and retreat center for good came to me in a meditation. The location could not be more perfect. And it's a pentagon inside a pentagon. The chapel, the interfaith chapel inside, is also pentagonal, and it sits in the nose of the larger pentagon. And the building, for those who believe in sacred geometry, is one of the most powerful points on planet Earth. And you're talking to someone who was in the Great Pyramid on December 22nd, 2012. You're talking to someone who has been to the Holy Land. I have been to Machu Picchu. I have been to some of the most sacred sites on our planet, and behind me is one of them. So I'm very protective of this project and protective of the sanctity. All of our outdoor sacred space is dedicated to the indigenous. We have a medicine wheel. We have, we call it Turtle Island Labyrinth, to also honor the North American creation mythology that we're writing on the back of a turtle. The people from Colombia who were discovered only about a decade ago, the Kogi people who ran up their mountain in the 1500s when the Spanish came and have been hiding for 500 years. The first time they came to North America to visit, they came here first because they wanted to see the oldest river on the continent. So we built them a Kogi Kiva to honor them before they arrived. So I just wanted to give your audience a sense of our deep humility in being stewards of this land, temporary stewards, and to ensure that there are future stewards of this land. We have started a community here. It's an intentional community, and it's called the Valley of Light. And that is a tip of the hat to the community we are using as our muse and model. That's the Federation of Damanhur in Italy. It's the City of Light. And if your listeners aren't aware of Damanhur, let me just underscore that in my humble opinion, it is the most advanced community on planet Earth. So we wish to emulate their high aspirations, their exceedingly evolved consciousness, and we too are building a community here of people who understand both the threats and the promise of this critical juncture in human history that we find ourselves. So that's a little summary of us, our place. I'll tell you a little bit more. The Oracle Institute, in addition to having an interfaith and spiritual focus, we also have an award-winning publishing house. We've won 6 book awards over the last decade, and we don't publish a lot of books, but the ones we publish are good. And not just good in an abstract sense, but helpful to those who are seeking to learn how they might help. They're very inspiring books. The latest one is written by Dr. Glenn Martin, who is the president of the Earth Constitution Institute, and it's called The Earth Constitution Solution, Designed for a Living Planet. And it sets forth the philosophy both behind the Earth Constitution itself and why it's so desperately needed, particularly now, but it also is a beautiful primer in, again, the challenges that we face, and it's presented in a way that's not doom and gloom, that offers us the ability for those of us who are awake to play our part in this drama. And it is a drama right now. We are facing unprecedented challenges. Never before have humans had to address so many problems all at once. And unfortunately, there's a great, I won't say majority, but there is a very vocal minority of power-based men who, due to their corruption and greed, are threatening the human experiment. They are outright threatening it. And unfortunately, they tend to be the ones in power positions, and they're linking up. I was watching Fareed Zakaria the other night, a journalist I greatly admire, and he was just talking about, you know, the honor among thieves, basically, that even though they have nothing in common, you know, Russia and China and some of these other nations which pose a threat due to their fascist and authoritarian worldviews, are starting to partner. So in addition to all the other challenges we face, the decline of democracy needs to be at the top of the list. So in addition to our spiritual side, we have a very activist side here at the Oracle Institute, which is why we have the other brand. The brand above me is our sort of, you know, we're going to get out there in the world and make good trouble, as John Lewis used to say. And it's a balancing act, because though we definitely steed ourselves in spirituality and in the common good and in desire to be of service to all, we also know that simply sitting, meditating, and fantasizing about a better world will not make it so. So we don't consider ourselves light holders as much as light workers.
At this point, I'd like to mention my gratitude to Professor Glenn Martin. Thanks to him, I joined the convention of the Parliament. And there's also this the Great Transition Initiative, which I've been following for some time and trying to contribute little by little. And thanks to a discussion there about the Constitution, Dr. Martin and I, we started communicating, and here we are. Yes. What are, have you felt any pressure, by the way? Have you received any negative feedback from anywhere? Or?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yes. I mean, I'm definitely on a watch list. I mean, you want me to go macro or micro? I'm on some low-level watch list. My father was head of the Arms Control Agency under Ronald Reagan. I grew up in a very political household. My father worked on the Hill, and he was military. In fact, he's buried at the Naval Academy graveyard, which is reserved for admirals. He was not an admiral, but they equated his public sector service to that of an admiral. He was involved with the SALT talks, the strategic SALT talks with Russia. So anyway, that's a little bit of my background. On a more local level, yes, we actually have had 2 lawsuits here to maintain the integrity of this campus. The first lawsuit had to do with a prison that they were going to build directly across the river from the Pentagon. And it was a very dirty project. It was a subsidiary of Halliburton, Dick Cheney's old company. It was a sole sourced contract. When the news was released that this prison was going to be built, it was a done deal. They said that it would be impossible to topple the project, and we did.
Oh.
That was the first lawsuit. That stole a year or 2 of my life, but it was well spent. The second lawsuit was when I filed to get the building permit for the Peace Pentagon. The local politicians had wanted the prison. This is a very poor rural region that I live in, and it's hard to imagine, but jobs in a prison are considered good jobs here. So when the prison was forced to leave, it actually didn't fully leave. It moved out of town, but anyway, it was a payback. It was basically our county council members punishing me for being the lead plaintiff in the first lawsuit. I was the lead plaintiff because they were going to condemn our property here at Oracle campus to build the bridge to the prison across the river. So I was one of about 20 plaintiffs, but I was the lead plaintiff. So then I ended up having to sue the county again. And this time, the Federal Justice Department was going to weigh in. Obama was president at the time. And it was so egregious that they were attempting to keep out an interfaith retreat center that it became a First Amendment lawsuit. Because these people weren't just Islamophobic, they were Buddhaphobic. They're everything phobic. And that was the second lawsuit, and that stole another 2 years of my life. Again, well spent. So by the time we broke ground on the Peace Pentagon, I had already lost 4 years. So I'm feeling a little bit behind in the work, but I was not, I'm very stubborn when it comes to God's work. So I was not leaving. I was not leaving. And to tell you that there is a happy ending. We went through a period of being shunned, very heavily shunned. And then we started in the period we're in now, which is mild curiosity. And every once in a while, evangelicals will come here and ask what we're doing and broaden their horizons to an interfaith message, into a pluralistic message of basically holding hands with our brothers and sisters everywhere on the planet. So, you know, I chose a challenging region of America to anchor this project, but I know it was the right place. I know it was the right place. And though there were some scary years there, I feel certain, my faith is absolute, that we have anchored the light here and that there will be a community here of amazing people to carry on this work and to create new projects. And I live now grooming and inspiring to the best of my ability the next generation.
Wonderful. Yes, when I hear the term interfaith, I feel respect. And then I would like to ask, I think that approach, if we take the word faith in the sense of strong conviction, atheists like me are also welcome, because to me, the fact that we are on the same planet is number one. That is number one. And then all the others, we may change our views, we may change this or that. Nothing is, so I consider myself in favor of sacred activism as well, because to me, life is sacred. Our planet is sacred. I prefer not to divide. Some people do that. Maybe most people do that. Some people divide earthliness and divineness or sacredness. I am against that division. I think it's a schizophrenic division. Yeah. I try to live as if I were preaching, as if I were, I don't know. To me, everything needs respectfully, you can find better words, but that attitude, some people say, okay, this is the time I'm praying or preaching or whatever. And this is the time of my daily work. To me, there is no such division. The whole thing embracing life. And we don't know what's beyond. I hope I'm wrong in certain cases. And but as long as I like this American statement, do your best, leave the rest. That's yes. Before I die, in the last 30 seconds of my life, I wish to be able to say that I did not choose myself. I did not choose so many things, but with what I have got, with I've been given, etc., I did my best and did, in spite of my errors and my misdeeds, I also like that expression, unintended consequences that I led, that harmed some people. And in spite of them, I also did something. I also contributed. And then that's how I would like to die, honestly. And we need, I think, for example, I don't like the concept of discussion so much, because discussion usually invites egos. I prefer the word chat, or relaxed, friendly. Or I never try to convince anyone on anything. Who am I to try to convince him? I am ready to be convinced. I'm open, and any criticism that does not include self-criticism is not criticism. So even when I find, even when I think that I am being, some people are doing wrong to me, I prefer to consider myself 51% responsible, so that I do not, it's so easy to simply accuse others and to feel better. So these are, I just wanted to share a few thoughts.
Well, I just want to add on that topic that some of the most moral people I have met in my life are atheists. And if everyone held your belief system, we'd be just fine. So yes, I call them spiritual atheists because they know life is sacred. These words are not only used in temples and churches. These words apply to nature, to our children, to our lifestyles. We need to be in communion and in that field, that frequency all the time. It's a blessing to be here, and let us pass on that blessing as best we can.
I agree. And I actually prefer not to use the word atheist for myself. I prefer naturalist.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
atheism is a position versus another position.
Yeah.
I'm not going into that. I think nature is interesting and rich and creative.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm simply trying to learn.
Well, that's the trend. People are going pagan. I mean, they don't use that term anymore. That's a term that's gone out of vogue. But basically, yeah, nature mysticism, that is the trending religion.
Oh, interesting.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, here in the United States, absolutely. I won't include the entire world, but yes, I mean, people are leaving churches in droves, and the next generation, that's where they seek their bliss. It's outdoors. It's on a mountaintop. It's, so that is a piece of our history that we dare not lose. One of the things we like to teach here is that humanity has gone through 5 paradigms. That's the primary reason the building is 5-sided. Okay, that's why we built a pentagon. So quickly, I will share that the first paradigm, and we can go scientific or religious. First paradigm is pre-Big Bang. pretty much a mystery, right? But all is one. All is in singularity before a thermonuclear explosion. That's the first paradigm. And for those who are religious, we say the first paradigm, well, if you're Abrahamic anyway, the first paradigm was in the Garden of Eden before the fall, right? Everything was just hunky-dory, no problems yet. Okay, then, ooh, Big Bang or the fall. And then we go into the second paradigm. And the second paradigm was female monotheism. Our early ancestors logically concluded that because women give birth, God's probably female. And that paradigm lasted at least 20,000 years. And we know this from archaeology and so forth. So then we enter the age of agriculture and male and female roles start separating. And that's when we go into the third paradigm. And the third paradigm was the period of polytheism, you know, starting with the Jewish faith, by the way, was not monotheistic at first. El was a mountain god. All right, so we can go way back. So we can go back to the Sumerian and Babylonian and, you know, the early pantheons, Egyptian, going through Greek, Roman to Hindu. And of all of those faiths, Hinduism is the only one who survived the next shift. And there are many, many interesting reasons that Hinduism survived. But basically, the world shifted and we entered the fourth paradigm. And the fourth paradigm is where we're stuck at the moment. And humans went back, most humans, and even devout Hindus would agree that above their triumvirate, there's Brahma, the ultimate God. We went into monotheism again. But unfortunately, humans weren't yet enough evolved or sophisticated to picture either a genderful or a genderless deity. So we have been living with a male god in patriarchy for about 2,000 years. So what we say at the Oracle Institute is that there's this fifth paradigm on the horizon, and it will be a time of balance. The sacred feminine will reemerge in her healthiest form. The sacred masculine will calm down and present in its most perfect form. And we will enter, hopefully, an era in which anthropomorphization of God will cease. We won't be picturing a guy in the sky, you know, or any of that, you know, and if you need to, go to Star Wars, right? The Force. But it's this energy field. It's this Akashic field. It's this frequency and bandwidth that when you're tapped in, whether you're an athlete in the zone or a monk on a mountaintop, you're one with it. And it's a beautiful experience that hopefully most humans at least get a taste of. So that is what we teach here, that we're entering this fifth paradigm, and that's why the building is 5 sides. And it's a very powerful building as a result, because it is all focused on that next paradigm and a culture of peace.
Wonderful. In one of my poems, I wrote, let the divine be female again. You know, my mother brought me up, honestly. That's why feminine force. That's why I have also have great respect. I consider on an International Women's Day, I said at one year, I consider myself an honorary woman. It's an honor, honestly. What before this session, let's say, ends, instead of with a comma, instead of a full stop or period, what else would you like to add? And is there anything else you would like to add? Or wish, or?
Well, let me share this. Early on in my personal shift, when I left the law and dedicated my life to service, I received also in meditation, in addition to the footprint like this for the building, the request or memory or inspiration to write 3 books. And I am in the process of writing the third. It's a trilogy. It's our foundational trilogy. The first is called The Truth, about the 5 primary religions, and that's about the past. The second book is called The Love of the 5th Spiritual Paradigm, and that was an anthology with many people contributing, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Maya Angelou, many of our heroes. And that was about where we are now. There's no unifying theosophy on the ground. So let us get back to the basics, the religion of love. So it's the present. So the truth was the past, the love is the present, and the light and the new human is about what's coming. And I am close to finishing this book. And in it are my best hopes for humanity and planet Earth. There are a lot of new humans here, new humans being defined as those who not only will comprehend what you and I have been talking about, Tarak, but will be able to add to the conversation in just glorious ways. New humans understand their connection to the planet. New humans understand their connection to each other. New humans know that the God game is not finite. There's no end to it, or there shouldn't be. There should be no winners and losers. The God game is infinite. The rules change as we evolve. The goal is to keep all the players on the field as long as possible. The goal is to allow the evolutionary impulse to take new and beautiful forms. So this book I am writing is the 3rd installment in our Oracle trilogy, and it's also my prayer, my 400-page prayer, that we make it. And we make it in just an amazing way, in a surprise way. You know, futurists often talk about the wild card scenarios. And when futurists use the term wild card, that's usually a bad thing. Like it's the scenario they haven't thought of, and it's probably something bad, and it's going to upset the apple cart in a really horrible way. But I am going to make this prediction that we are going to get a wild card scenario that makes sense of all the chaos we're going through right now, and which lights the path into an amazing tomorrow for future generations.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, dear Laura George. We're together. Thank you.
Thank you. It was so fun. Thank you. A real pleasure.
We're together.
Om Jai.